On episode 671 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Kait Richardson and discuss her book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/671. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. Each week, we dive deep into health and fitness topics that affect those of us over 40. I'm Coach Allen. I'm an NASM certified personal trainer with specializations in corrective exercise, behavior change, performance enhancement, and fitness nutrition. A Precision Nutrition Level 1 coach, a FAI certified functional age-linked specialist, and an OTA Level 2 online trainer. Each week, I'm joined by our co-host, Coach Rachel. She is an NASM certified personal trainer and a RRCA Level 1 run coach. Let us be your coaches as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Hey, Raz, how are you?
Good, Alan. How are you?
Good. We're still both good.
Yep.
So what we're doing now is we're recording multiple episodes because we're running up on the Thanksgiving holidays in the United States, and we're running up on Christmas. So we're going to be doing some double ups here and there, and this is one of our double ups. So literally, we did the previous hello session no more than 10, 15 minutes ago, and so we're doing another one. I'm still struggling with the technology, and it's still cold in Michigan.
Yep.
And so but just we wanted to do this hello session just to let you know that we are going to be doing some record aheads and things like that. But we're going to get into the next session. So Rachel, you ready to learn how to eat like a normal person?
Yes, please.
Our guest today is a recovered dieter, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a wellness junkie, just not the celery juice and calorie counting way. After helping thousands of clients in private practice, she is certain most fad diets, supplements, and weight loss medications are a waste of time, energy, and money. Her mission is to empower women to quit yo-yo dieting and start fueling their lives through the power of balanced nutrition and eating whole foods. With no further ado, here's Kait Richardson. Kait, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thanks for having me.
So your book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person, very interesting title, very hooky, very good. I like that. It really is, it's kind of interesting that we have to think like that.
Yeah, it is.
Because we see people and they're successful and they're doing these things and we're kind of like, I just want to be like them, and I'm abnormal, they're normal. And unfortunately, statistically, if you're obese, you're getting more and more normal than they are.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those sad things is we have to reteach ourselves some things to just feel normal in situations, not necessarily be normal, but how to feel normal when we're doing the things that we're doing.
Sure. Well, that's such an interesting point, that you bring up how obesity is becoming our norm. But just because something is normal doesn't mean it's actually normal for our physiology or normal for our body or human health. So I'll tell you a bit about why I titled my book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person. I'll give you the short reason is because I'm a dietitian and I work in private practice. So for years and years and years, I have women come in and they sit in front of me, men as well, and they tell me, I've tried this diet, I've tried the keto diet, I've tried paleo, I've tried counting every single calorie I put in my mouth, I weigh all my food. I just want to eat like a normal person because none of this stuff is working. And like you said, they observe other people and the way they're eating, and they feel like there's something wrong with them because maybe their friend who doesn't have a food complex or a weight issue or pre-diabetes can just eat quote unquote normal food and not make a big deal about it. And so when someone tells me that, I always want to say, well, first of all, I know exactly how you feel. I've been through that myself. but also what does your normal mean? What does normal mean to you? Because it's going to mean something different to everyone else. And it's on a spectrum where some people are going to want to eat a little bit more. I don't know if extreme is the right word, right? Where they're going to be more diligent, they're going to be more mindful, they're going to be more strict with how they're eating, and then there's other people who just want to eat intuitively and eat freely. So it's getting to the bottom of, well, what does normal mean for you?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. So to kind of get started into all this, because as I was looking through the book and I was like, okay, how do I map this all out? You did a great job in the book, but I was like, okay, until we understand your protocol, then a lot of this kind of just falls in place. You're like, okay, got all these ideas, lots of ideas, and then but when we put them into what you call the BNT protocol, it kind of makes all these topics we're about to talk back about, kind of ties them all together, if you will. So could you take just a moment to describe the BNT protocol?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a little acronym I threw together because as I was going through my profession, talking with people, I figured out there's a few fundamental practices that help anybody's foundation to what normal healthy eating means to them just work so much better. So the B and BNT stands for balanced. I want people eating a balance of macronutrients. So I typically don't put people on protocols that involve them completely cutting out one of the macronutrients. And for those people who don't know the three macronutrients, they are protein, carbohydrates, and dietary fat. So I typically don't want people eating a bunch of fat and excluding carbohydrates, like the ketogenic diet. Sure, it works for some people, but this is how to eat like a normal person, not an extreme person. I want them to get a nice balance. And then when I work with the individual, we can tailor things to be a bit more specific if we need to. I want them eating nutritious sources of foods. That's what the N stands for. And I define nutritious as being foods that have something that benefits the body, whether this is fiber, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, lean proteins, anti-inflammatory properties. And I want them to eat nutritious foods 80% of the time. So there's always going to be a time and place for ice cream or Ritz crackers. I just had a client who's eating Ritz crackers, so it's in the front of my mind. Those things, yeah, they can fit in our diet now and then, but we want the majority of what we're eating to come from nutritious sources. And I put the T in there, and this is a little bit controversial for some people, but I find that when people are eating every 3 to 6 hours of their waking hours, they tend to have better control over their cravings, their food choices, their portions. Some people thrive when they're intermittent fasting. Other people find that it just makes them ravenously hungry later in the day. So I typically have people eating a balanced, nutritious meal and snack every 3 to 6 hours, depending on their activity level.
Okay, good, good. So the first thing I just want to smack out of the way. I say that because I was last week. I was talking, and I was read this. I was on Facebook. Okay, again, I
Mm-hmm.
should probably just stay away from social media altogether. But it was it was basically a coach that was saying you need to stay at 1,200 calories, and I was like, I had to walk away from my computer because I was like, if there was a person standing there and said that, I would smack them.
Good.
You know, I know that's not politically correct these days, but I was like, no, worst advice ever. Can you
Mm-hmm.
explain why the whole BMR calculation and the whole, yeah, stay at 1,200 calories is maybe not the best advice? I'll be kind, but maybe the worst advice. I don't know, but
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I'm with you. I would say that 95% of people aren't going to be needing 1,200 calories. Sure, there are the maybe sedentary little old ladies who are quite petite who, sure, they need a lower caloric intake. Or maybe there's toddlers, right? A toddler is going to eat closer to 1,200 to 1,400 calories in a day. But for the rest of us, it's probably too low. And here's why. You mentioned the BMR, and that stands for basal metabolic rate. That's just a fancy term to say that if you were to lay in bed all day long and not move a muscle, but your organs were functioning, your brain was functioning, your heart was pumping, everything was just operating, your BMR is how many calories it takes in a day to just keep you alive and where you are. So most of us who are listening to this podcast aren't just laying in bed around all day, not moving a muscle. We're either doing some intentional exercise or we are doing something called NEAT, which is non exercise activity thermogenesis. So we're running around, burning energy when we are vacuuming, chasing our kids, cleaning the counter, doing all the things. So we have our basal metabolic rate, which just keeps our organs functioning. And then we're burning a certain amount of energy by doing whatever we do. So when someone just tells you to eat an arbitrary number like 1,200 calories, they're not taking into account all of the energy you burn and your specific individual BMR. Because I can tell you right now, Alan, you and I have different BMRs.
Yeah.
Somebody who has a lot of muscle mass, different age groups, right? That's all going to influence our BMR. So the problem is, let's say that somebody has a BMR of 1,500, right? You can get these tested, or you can do a predictive equation online. So if someone's BMR is 1,500, and then they are doing 3 strength training workouts a week, walking their dog most days, and they sit in an office most of the day, but they try to get up and be a weekend warrior. They're doing more stuff on their feet. Well, we can assume that they're probably burning an extra anywhere between 150 and 400 calories a day. Right? These are just arbitrary guesses. So that puts them at burning up to 1,900 calories a day. Well, if someone says just eat 1,200, sure, that automatically creates a caloric deficit, but that's not very sustainable. So the problem is, so and so person who's used to being at maintenance at 1,900 calories or so drops all the way down to 1,200 calories. They're able to stick to it for maybe a week or months. And then as soon as they get hungry or they go on vacation or they start eating more than 1,200 calories, because that's a really low number, they start to regain all the weight and then some. And then they find that subsequent times that they try to drop back down to 1,200 calories, they don't get the same results because their body's metabolism has learned their dirty tricks and slowed down. So now instead of their BMR being 1,500, it's 1,420. The next time they diet too low, it's 1,390 and so forth.
Yeah. And it's not just doing this because it can. It's literally shutting off body processes. It's not
Yeah.
oh, we could have a lower metabolism if we wanted to. The body literally says, okay, well, we don't need an immune system. We're starving to death. So let's just
Yeah.
shut off the spleen and make it smaller and get it out of the way. Oh, you don't need all this muscle mass that you've built up over this exercise time. Let's just go ahead and cut that out because again, that doesn't add value to somebody who's not doing a whole lot and again, not eating enough to maintain it. That's the shuttle all this stuff out. We don't need these things, especially when you're
Yeah.
over 40 and you're already in sarcopenia and osteopenia. It's like bone density, muscle mass, the spleen, all those functions
Yeah.
like and reproductive functions and all of that as well. So we're just really just throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Right, exactly. People want to diet so low so quickly because they're often desperate to lose a bunch of weight, but there are so many negative side effects that come with that, including losing that muscle tissue, which is so, so precious, right? Especially as we get older, we start losing muscle mass at a much quicker rate. So we need to preserve that muscle tissue, and eating in too low of a deficit for too long puts us at a disadvantage. It's much harder to play catch up.
Yeah, and I liked you mentioned the Ansel Keys starvation diet in the book, and I love this. I love this study. One, we could never get away with doing this kind of stuff today, because these were conscientious objectors that didn't want to go to war, so they gave them an opportunity. You can do this, or you can go to prison. And almost every one of them that chose to do this changed their mind pretty quickly,
Mm,
and didn't want to do it. But their calorie level was at like 1570 or something like that. So these folks were literally they lost 15% of body mass, if I recall, but they were harming themselves, physically harming themselves to get out of this study because it was so terrible on them at
yeah,
1570.
yeah,
And and they were normal weight people to start with. These are not obese people to start with. So that drastic reduction in calories, that being at that point
mm,
so far below what their body needed to function, they literally like suffered as
yeah.
they went through this
What
whole process.
I tell people, biology always wins. So no matter, how much willpower you have or how disciplined you are, if your brain is usually your captain, right? And you're really committed to eating this low calorie deficit, biology is going to drive you to go seek out food and nutrition when you are starving because it keeps you alive. Our survival mechanism is quite strong. So even people with the best intentions or people who are locked into a study will feel really desperate for energy when they're deprived.
Now, in you went through a series where you're talking about archetypes and then the sub archetypes, and most of us, I think, fall into this all or nothing thing. We're either dieting or not. We're either on or we're off. And and a lot of people will try some form in the middle, but if we are an all or nothing person, we kind of have these archetypes, and I think it's important to kind of go through them a little bit. And as you do, I think most of us sitting here, I'm like, yep, that's me. That's what I did. Can you kind of go through these a little bit so we kind of understand a framework as we move forward?
Sure, I'd love to. This is my favorite thing to talk about. So this is the whole inspiration for my book. I realized it in myself, and a lot of the people I seem to attract in my private practice were also all or nothing with food. And you summed it up perfectly. It's either they were on a diet, they were on a fitness program, or they were completely off. It was really hard to find balance and subsequently eat like a normal person. And so that's the archetype, the all or nothing dieter. But then I found that there were little sub archetypes, right? So one all or nothing dieter wouldn't necessarily present as the next. So the sub archetypics that I found were the food tracker, the obsessive food tracker. So this is somebody who every time they tried to diet or every time they try to lose weight, they would result to tracking nutrients, whether they were following a plan that they got online from somebody, whether they were using MyFitnessPal and doing the 1,200 calorie diet, or whether they were doing the same macronutrient split that they had done 15 years ago and they were doing it over and over again. And they were obsessively tracking. And when they were tracking, they were doing quote unquote well. And then as soon as they didn't track, or maybe they tracked incorrectly, meaning they overate something or whatever it was, they completely spiraled. So one day of not tracking made them say, screw this, I'm done. I already messed up. Might as well go get burger and fries. So that's the food tracker. The other one, the second one that I identify the most with is the perfectionist. So it's somebody who either has to do everything correctly, and if they're not doing it perfectly, that's kind of an excuse for them to not do it at all. The perfectionist feels like he or she has to present themselves as being a perfect eater. They're always on track. They're the person that's going to order the green smoothie. They're going to order the dressing on the side with their salad. They're going to kind of seem like the health nut, but behind closed doors, they're overeating, they're making poor choices, or they're feeling really guilty about how and what they ate. The third subarchetype is the emotional eater, right? And who hasn't emotionally ate before? It's normal for us, sometimes to go to food when we're feeling sad or even happy, right? Celebrating with ice cream or birthday cake. But the emotional eater emotionally eats so often that it starts to impede on his or her mental well-being. So it's somebody who maybe quote unquote eats good all day long, but then as soon as they feel stressed or bored in the afternoon, or maybe they're lonely at night, that's just when everything goes to hell. They're eating a bunch of snacks. They can't control themselves around sugar. They're making impromptu trips to the grocery store to pick up junk or ordering things on Uber Eats. And they're looking for that comfort or that release from food. It's happening so often that it's impeding on their overall well being, physically and mentally. The fourth subarchetype is the yo-yo dieter. This is the person who's done every single diet under the sun. She's done Atkins, she's done the vegan, she's done the carnivore, she's done everything. And as a result, all of these different diet rules start to make her feel overwhelmed and confused. So one diet says eat a bunch of meat. The other one says meat is horrible for you. One of them says to eat primarily fat on the keto diet, but then she's also tried diets that are, higher in starches and really low fat. So she feels really confused about what to eat and when to eat. And as a result, she doesn't really make any change. She doesn't take the right kind of action because she's just overwhelmed with all the different diets that she's tried and doesn't really know how to move forward. And so that's where the BNT protocol can help her simplify things and make more practical changes. Then there's the binge eater, right? Binge eating is often followed by a day of maybe restrictive eating. So somebody who's tried to diet or undereat all day, either intentionally or unintentionally. People who have really stressful jobs, or they're on the go, or they're stay-at-home parents following their kids everywhere and they just forget to eat. As a result, they binge eat at night. Or it could also be coupled with somebody who's got some emotional trauma going on. They feel just depressed and lonely, and food is the only thing that gives them that comfort. So they overeat at certain periods of the day. And then the final one is the cardio bunny. And if I could go back in time, I would have named this subarchetype the over exerciser. It's somebody who's doing so much activity all day long. The girl I wrote about in the book, she's training for a marathon, and they're under fueling for their specific sport or activity level. They're either purposefully eating low carb or restricting calories, or just unaware that they're not eating enough for how much activity they're doing. Like, this is the person who's doing a lot of activity, not just taking a walk after dinner. And as a result, overeating or making poor choices. So those
Yeah.
are the six sub archetypes.
Yeah. And I think you may see yourself in multiple levels of these
Yep.
at different, and particularly at different times. So it's not like you are one of these and then you're nothing else. You may have experienced multiple versions of either of these or any of these. Now, one of the things I do with my clients, and it seems to be that kind of that brick wall, if you will, so that like this is the hardest thing to do, but it's also one of the most valuable things that you can do if you want to eat like a normal person, is to do some planning.
Yeah.
But meal planning just kind of scares people. It's like, oh, well, that's a lot to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I know when I try to if I try to sit down with a client and do any kind of meal planning, after a period of time, they're like, I don't like the way you want me to eat, and now they rebel against it. And so meal planning becomes like this, if you will, like line in the sand. I will not
Mm.
cross this. I will not do this. But it's so valuable. So why is meal planning essential, and how can we go about it where we don't feel like we're tying ourselves to the ground?
Sure. Well, I think you said something really key there, which is when people are following someone else's meal plan or ideas of what a meal plan should look like, they rebel against it. They don't want to follow that because that doesn't fit either their palate, their family's palate, their time, their lifestyle. So that's a big problem, right? Is we don't want to just automatically follow someone else's meal plan. It might work for a week or two, but if it's not sustainable, it's not the right plan. But it needs to be something that we do consistently. And the reason why it's so important is because the obvious, it saves a lot of time during the week, but most importantly, it helps prevent us from making impulsive choices that perhaps don't align with our own personal goals, our own philosophies, and what we know we should be doing and should be eating to see results. A lot of us know eat more veggies, eat less sugar, choose more foods that we cook from home more than takeout. Like, a lot of us know that, but a lot of people struggle to actually execute. It's because they don't have a plan, they don't have those things easily accessible in their home, and or they have a bunch of stuff they don't actually like at home, and they'd rather just go seek out something that's palatable and quick and easy. So having a plan gives you a framework and it gives you structure so that you can make better decisions throughout the week and over time ultimately achieve the goals you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, one of the keys. It's so funny. I remember when I was struggling, and you know, this would be wonderful if we just lived in a vacuum. If we could just make our own decisions, live our own lives, we could do this and it'd be so easy. This is what I like to eat. This is how I like to eat it. This is what I want to eat. This is what I'm going to do. This is when I'm going to work out. This is when I'm going to do that. And there was no other people or obligations or anything in our way. Like, I
Mm.
remember I was working in an office space, and I was, really trying to be diligent with what I was eating. And I came off the elevator and I could smell it as soon as I walked off. It was these donuts that are made out of potato flour, and they call them spud nuts.
Okay.
Okay. Now, potatoes have a higher glycemic index than sugar. I can't even imagine what potato flour, I can't even imagine. And
Sure.
so,
And probably paired with sugar, I'm
yeah, with
guessing.
sugar, yeah, coated in sugar. So it was sugar coated in sugar, fried in sugar. And so you could smell it. So I came off the elevator, it's like, boom, okay, they're here. and it was, the break room was right in front of it, and so people are like chumming like sharks. It's like, okay, shark lid and water, and I'm like, okay. And everybody's like, there's spud nuts, you have to have spud nuts, you have to. And I'm like, okay, I gotta set a boundary here, like I
Yeah,
cannot, I cannot do certain things if I want this. But setting boundaries, and then maybe even the next level of enforcing them, communicating them, getting them out there. I think
sure.
that's so important. If we're going to make change, we can't, we're not in a vacuum. There's the people.
Yeah,
How do we go about setting and communicating health boundaries?
sure. Well, I want to answer that question and I want to throw something else in there. I'm thinking about your spud nut situation and meal planning, right? So, what did you do when it was the spud nuts, right? I
Okay.
know that we're going to talk about
Well,
the boundaries, but what did you do?
early on, I was in the break room,
Hmm.
and I would probably have one of them straight away while I was drinking my coffee, talking to everybody, because that's the social thing you have to do, is talk to people.
Hmm.
So I'm eating one, and then I'm grabbing another one when I fill up my coffee cup mug again to take it to my office. And then around 10 o'clock, I may come back into the break room to get a coffee, and I'll check that box. There's
Hmm.
always extras in there. So I eat another one. And so it's a three spud nut morning. Um, and no, that was not the plan. That was not on the meal plan. And yeah, I
Sure.
did bring my lunch. And so what I realized was, okay, I have to set some patterns for myself. Like, okay,
Sure.
what pivot? What can I do instead of this? So there's a trigger was, well, first the smell coming off the elevator. Second was the peer pressure of, there's spud
Hmm.
nuts. You have to get some spud nuts. And then they were in the break room all day long. And so what I
Hmm.
knew was, okay, if I walk right past their door, because I had to go to the door from there to get to my office. If I go straight to my office, I would have little bags of nuts prepackaged in my
Hmm.
desk. And so I would go grab those nuts. I say, okay, I got to put my bag away. So normal person, I got to go put my bag away, and I'll come back. I come back with the nuts. And so I make my coffee and I nosh on the nuts. I'm talking to everybody. And then when I'm going to refill my coffee, I refill my coffee and I leave. And then for the rest of the day, I had a rule: do not go in that direction, because the bathroom was also in over by there, by the elevators and by the break
Hmm.
room, all in like one central. So I said, okay, I cannot use the break room on this floor. If I want coffee, I have to go to another floor. If I want to use the bathroom, I have to go to another floor. And for me, that set of rules worked very well. But I
Sure.
said it in a way that didn't really break anybody else's flow. I was sitting
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
room with them, but I was noshing on nuts and not spud nuts. And I was there, so I looked like a normal person, hanging out with people, not avoiding, like running to my office, shutting the door, and
Yeah.
and and being a recluse. I kind of am a recluse, but I, again, it is what it is. I just knew I had to come up with another way. And
Yeah.
so, but there are times like I wanted to be able to work out during the day at a lunch hour. And so I had to set schedules and do different things. But I had to communicate that and put that out there in a way where people just knew, okay,
Yeah.
Alan's not going to be available from 2 to 3 because he's going to the gym. This is just
Yeah.
what he does. So I'm really curious. I mean, I want to walk through how you talk about communicating these health barriers, because I think a lot of people feel like, okay, all these other obligations, all these other people in my life, I have to put me last and them
Yeah.
first. And it's really
Well, I
hard
think
to say no. It's really hard to set boundaries.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sure is. And that's a buzzword that's going on. So when I hear about your experience with the donuts, because I want to go to that and then I want to talk about the boundaries piece, because I think the situation you just described is so common. Not the spud nuts piece, right? But the food or the trigger in your environment that can be really hard to escape. But then you also don't want to be, or some people don't want to be that person who shows up and they're like, I don't eat sugar and I don't eat spud nuts. I'm better than you guys because I don't eat those things. Like, that's not very
Yeah.
palatable to maybe colleagues, right? So we don't want to be that person. So where do we find the balance? And so if you were my client and you were in this situation, I would say, okay, the best thing that works for Alan is for him to separate himself from the situation. And his plan needs to include snacks and meals that he actually enjoys that he can eat around other people, right? Heating up tilapia and broccoli in the break room while everyone else is eating donuts may not be either exciting for you, enticing for you, and it might, kind of literally stink for everyone else. So having something you actually enjoy is so key for when there's temptation around. And if somebody's following another person's meal plan that says, for a snack, eat a banana. Okay, maybe they like bananas, but they don't love bananas. And then they see the spud nuts. It's going to be really hard to say, I'm going to just eat my banana instead of the spud nuts. But if they love a banana with almond butter and they're able to put that in their plan, and that almond butter has that like yummy, fatty, creamy texture that scratches the itch, having a banana and almond butter in their meal plan that they created can help them better follow their own plan and not feel so tempted by the spud nuts. Or if it were me and I was in the situation and I was following my BNT protocol, I would say, okay, for breakfast on an empty stomach, the last thing I want to do is put a bunch of refined sugar in my body. That's going to spike my blood sugar, cause a crash. That's going to make me want to keep eating sugar. So my definition as a normal person would be, I've got my plan. I've got this yummy meal that I have for lunch that I'm enjoying, that I'm looking forward to. I'm going to eat that first. And then if I want to have either half a spud nut or share a spud nut with someone or just try it, I'm going to have it after a meal so that I have more control over my portion. And that would be a way that I would enforce a personal boundary with sugar where I don't totally restrict it, but I have lots of other options and I eat something filling before incorporating that. But that's a personal boundary. So, how do we communicate boundaries when we are feeling peer pressured by everyone? Well, one of the quotes that I put in my book is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a polite hell no. So this comes from the perfectionist chapter, where she was a people pleaser. A lot of times perfectionists, believe it or not, tend to be people pleasers. Why else are they trying to be so perfect? Well, to look a certain way or appear a certain way in front of other people. So perfectionists oftentimes, not always, have trouble saying no because they want to be liked and whatever. So if it's not a hell yes for you, it should be a polite hell no. So unless spud nuts are like your favorite thing ever, they're totally worth it, right? You see them and you're like, yes, this is something I rarely get. It is my favorite dessert. Then instead of, it being like maybe, it's a hell yes, then you can find ways to integrate it if you want. But if it's a nah, then it should be a polite hell no. So if somebody comes up to you and they're saying, you gotta have the spud nuts, they're so great, you gotta have it, you can say, oh, you know what? I appreciate you having them, but they're not my favorite. I'm looking forward to when Tim brings in the chocolate chip cookies on his birthday next week. I'm going to have some then. And then you kind of, you know, enjoy the camaraderie. You don't seem like somebody who is putting down other people for enjoying the spud nuts, but you're still sticking to your guns. Another thing that you can do, kind of like you mentioned with your workouts during lunch, is communicating with people your boundaries ahead of time. So if sugar keeps showing up in your office and people are continuously offering it, you can simply say, hey, I don't eat sugar in the morning. I appreciate it, but if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to skip it. I might enjoy it later. It's just my own personal philosophy. I don't feel very good. And if people don't respect that, then you can just walk away, because there's always going to be that people that try to get you to eat what they're eating in a way to make themselves feel better. But I would just say in that situation, walk away. I also mentioned in the book scheduling boundaries. And in your situation with the spud nuts, this doesn't really work, but it works with your fitness plan. So what I hear from clients a lot of times is that they're in the middle of a workday, whether they're in the office or whether they're at home, and meetings just get put on their calendar, right? Somebody just wants them at noon when it's their scheduled lunch break, or they're supposed to shut their computer at 4:30, but someone schedules something for 4:15, and that impedes in their after work walk or their after work healthy snack. And by the time they get off the call, they're just famished or unmotivated. So by scheduling in your boundaries, putting in breaks in your calendar for lunch and exercise, you are communicating without actually having to say anything. So if possible, making yourself unavailable. It's a great way to make sure you stick to your guns.
Yeah, that was the actual point. And it was funny because occasionally my boss would forget, so I'd get a call from him like right at 2 o'clock. I was getting ready to go. I was already changed clothes. And I get the
Ooh,
call.
the
Come
worst.
up to my office. I'm like, okay. I'm walking through the C-suite dressed in just tennis shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt. He's like, what is this? I'm like, 2 to 3, my lunch hour. I go to work. We'll go work out. He's like, oh, And he tells me what he wants. I'm like, do you need this before 4 o'clock? He's like, no. Okay, you'll have it at 4.
Yeah.
And it was that just that telling myself I had permission to
Yeah.
not just do what I was told to do, but to kind of acknowledge this was actually more important than that, unless there
Hmm.
was a deadline. And if there wasn't, he did have a deadline. I'm like, okay, then it is what it is. But
Yeah.
at least having that saying, this is right now, this is ranked a 7, and that is ranked, I don't know.
Mm.
I'm gonna still do my 7, but I'm gonna find out how to rank that relative.
Mm.
He can have it at 4 o'clock. I go do my workout. I get back. I give him what he wants by 4 o'clock. He didn't miss a thing.
Mm.
So his thing now becomes a 5 and mine's a 7. I go do it. He comes in and says, no, I got to have this by 3 o'clock. I'm like, okay. Then I'm back down in my office. I get it done. I send it to him before 3 o'clock. Then I go do my workout.
Right.
That kind of thing. That's the way I approached it. And it was very effective. And then after a while, you train the people around you to treat you the way that you want to be treated.
What came up for me when you were discussing that is you always sound like you have a really good rapport and relationship with your boss, right? Where you're like, okay, at work, my boss, he has some authority. If he needs something done by 3, then I have to reschedule. But it also sounds like he's probably respecting you as well, like allowing you to, being okay with you going and exercising in the middle of the day. What I see for some people is two things. One, if they were in your same exact situation and they had to flip flop the time that they're going to the gym and the time that they're finishing their work, oftentimes the perfectionists or the all or nothing people will use the fact that they had to slow down or move back their workout as an excuse not to do anything at all. And that's
Yeah.
a huge trap for people. So maybe because you had to turn in your project or deadline by 3 p.m., if that only left you with 20 minutes to work out, or you were kind of tired at 3 p.m., a lot of people might say, well, you know what? Since I didn't get to do my whole 45 minutes, what's the point? Why not? I'm hungry. And that's the trap of the all or nothing thinker. So if that situation were to ever happen to someone where they had their boundaries, they had their plan, then life happened and they weren't able to do that, trying to find that doing something is better than doing nothing, and moving forward and taking any action, whether that's lower intensity or less duration, is still a move in the right direction. It's still progress. That's a big thing for a lot of the all or nothing thinkers to really try to adopt.
Yeah. And it's pervasive, if you will. So it's so funny because I don't walk around here. I live on an island in the Caribbean, and I don't walk
Mhm.
around with like personal trainer printed across my chest. So a lot of people here don't even really know what I do for a living because I do
Mhm.
all my training online. They know it's something to do with health and fitness, but typically not a whole lot. It was so funny because we had this party that we were hosting, and it was like 36 people. And so this
Mhm.
one, we're having a catered meal. So the meal's coming out. And the woman walked up, and we were just sitting there talking. She says, well, is there anything here you can eat?
Mm.
Like the fact that, I eat healthy or I am a certain way
Yeah, I know that.
is
Mhm.
not what she's thinking. So it really does. That's that normal abnormal thing that we were talking
Yeah,
about. And that's a part of boundaries. That's just understanding, yes, I have my way of eating, and it may
yeah,
be different from your way of eating. And but yeah, everything that they were serving, I could have eaten. I chose certain things I didn't want to eat because they didn't serve me. But
yeah.
it's just reminding me of those sitting there, because I'd already read this book, and I'm sitting there with her, and she's like, well, is there anything here you can even eat? Because the whole concept of good food, bad food, and boundaries
Yeah,
and limits, and what normal people eat, uh,
yeah.
just is so skewed. So it's a very
Well,
good book, and I'm glad you took the time to kind of define some of this stuff, because I think people think if I start eating healthy, then I'm the weird one.
oh, yeah, yeah. A lot of people feel a little bit ostracized. I call it the social butterfly dilemma. It's a little bit easier for people who may not want to go out every weekend, or who, might have a family who eats the same way they do, and it's not so difficult. But it's hard for some people who want to go out or find themselves in situations where maybe they're entertaining clients for work, or they have a big social life, or they have a excuse me, a big family, or they've got picky eaters at home, and they kind of have to learn to be a little bit flexible with how and what they eat. And so if they can adopt routine eating habits that really serve them, right? When it's just an average day at the work or at the office, an average Tuesday night dinner, they're not doing anything special. If they have some fundamental principles that align with their specific goals, they have some boundaries about how and what they eat, some guidelines, some things that they follow, like the BNT protocol is that guideline for me and for many of my clients. Then when they're out in situations where they can't control everything, and even if the food maybe had fit their old or previous definition of bad foods, and I say that in quotes for people listening, they'll be able to better navigate those situations because they know 80% of the time they're eating balanced, nutritious meals. They're giving their body what it needs to feel and look its best. So they can have whatever it might be when they're at a potluck or they're at a dinner out or they just are on a road trip and the only place to stop is Five Guys Burger and Fries. And it's like, what are you going to eat there, right? Okay, eat that, move on with your life, knowing that your routine, normal, everyday eating fits what you need.
Yeah.
When
And I
I
think
became a
yeah.
mom, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
go
you, but
ahead. Go ahead, please.
when I became a mom, I heard a quote and it was, flexi is sexy. And what that means is your baby is going to control a lot of things. You can go in with a schedule. You can know, okay, I want my baby to nap at 9 a.m., 12 o'clock, and 3:30. And I want him to go to bed at 7, and I want to be perfect. And you can have this whole schedule. And the schedule's great. It gives you a framework. It gives you confidence in going in the day. But if that baby has a blowout on your way to your park when you're going to go on a walk, or if he doesn't want to go down for a nap when you want him to go for a nap, you have to learn to roll with the punches a little bit, knowing that, hey, you have a schedule, you have a plan. If you stick to it most of the time, things are going to work out great. You got to be a little bit flexible with things, right? Otherwise, you're just going to make yourself miserable. So whenever it comes to eating out, that's kind of my philosophy is be flexible, right? If you have to be flexible, it's okay as long as your routine days are structured 80% of the time.
Great. Kate, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are
Mm-hmm.
3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
Mm-hmm. So, do you want me to go through what it is for healthiest and fittest and happiest in my?
However you want to go about it. Really, it's just
Sure.
wellness. What are the 3
Mm,
things that you would recommend to someone who wants to improve their
mm.
wellness? I'm
Well, I'll piggyback on the thing I was just talking about, right? That 80% of the time, it's the 80/20 rule. And I was saying this to my fiance, and he said, there's so many 80/20 rules. I guess there's some to do with like business, but my 80/20 rule is eating balanced, healthy, nutritious things 80% of the time and leaving that 20% or so for fun, right? For some people, it might be 10, 15, or 20%, just depending on your philosophy. And I find in my practice that when people are really restrictive, way, way, way too often, they never give themselves a chance to just be human. It's really hard to stay consistent for the long haul. And that's when they revert back to that all or nothing. So if you're waking up early to exercise Monday through Friday, but you sleep in on Sunday, no big deal. Or if you order the really healthy chicken and vegetable bean soup, but you want the French baguette on the side because that makes it satisfying, fine. It's not a big deal. It's a bit more, balanced. As far as fittest, I would tell everyone, especially women over 40, to strength train. We didn't really talk about that too much today, but if I had a nickel for every time I was encouraging my clients to do some kind of strength training, body weight exercise, if you hate, hate, hate going to the gym, you've tried it a million times and it's just not your jam, finding ways to put tension on the muscle is a non-negotiable, but you can do it in other ways. So maybe it's not going to a box gym with a bunch of gym bros um, and sweating in the weight room. Perhaps it's buying weights at home, doing resistance bands, bar classes with high resistance, kettlebells, just doing something that challenges the muscle. Going back to what you mentioned earlier with bone health, muscle. I mean, those are just precious materials that our body needs. Putting tension on the muscle is a great way to maintain that health. I'd say my third one would go in that happiness category, which would be balance in all areas. I was somebody for the longest time who was so, so, so focused on health and fitness. I was so obsessed with being fit and being healthy that it was great until it started to impede on all other areas of my life, right? And I'm really grateful for that time where I was hyper obsessive because it taught me a lot and it helped me build a foundation. But I got to a place where I realized that if I was so obsessed with exercising, I was missing out on all the joys of life. I was missing out on going to coffee and a walk with my friends because I felt guilty for missing the gym, or I didn't feel like I could partake in dinners out because they didn't fit my macros, right? So for me, it's balance. And for every person, I think you can define what that balance looks like. Some people want something a little bit more strict, and other people want something a bit more laissez faire and relaxed. And different seasons of our life are going to call for different levels of balance, right? There's balance on vacation and there's balance when we're at home. So, really understanding and getting to know what balance means for each individual person, I think can lead to not only a healthier life, but a happier, more fulfilling one as well.
Excellent. So, Kait, if someone wanted to learn more about you and your book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person, where would you like for me to send them?
Yeah, well, my book is already available. It just came out in October. So you can get my book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person, a guide to overcoming the all or nothing mindset with food and diet, on Amazon. My website is kaitricharsonrd.com. So you can learn more about me. I've got some printable resources on there, some blog posts, and you can get in contact with me and order the book. My name is spelled Kait, kaitricharsonrd.com.
All right. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/671, and I'll be sure to have the links there. Kait, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Welcome back, Raz.
Hey, Alan, I absolutely loved your discussion with Kait and her book, How to Eat Like a Normal Person. When I first listened to that title, I just sat there and think, gosh, how wonderful would it be just to eat and not have to think about what I was eating? But as it stands, I don't eat like a normal person. I'm not normal. I choose my foods based on a lot of different factors. But I do love the idea of just relaxing a little bit more about not stressing so much about counting calories and worrying about things, but such is life.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be the first, because people say, "Well, Alan, how do you eat?" And I'm like, "Okay, you don't want to eat like I eat.
Same.
You wouldn't eat like I eat." So I'll tell you, when I was considering being a bodybuilder in my 20s, my mid 20s, I ate a ton of tuna and pasta every day.
Oh
Okay.
my.
I mean, like 2 or 3 meals a day of tuna and pasta, and a lot of it. But I was training super, super hard and putting in a lot of effort. And so that worked for me. It would not work for me today. But today, the way I eat also is not a way that I think other people would ever want to eat. Because I'll be sitting here like this morning. Okay, last night I cooked 2 steaks, but Tammy was out with friends and she was going to go to dinner to the sushi place with them. And so I had this extra steak that I'd cooked last night that was sitting in the fridge, and I just grabbed it. That was my breakfast. A steak, okay?
Wow.
Period. It's about maybe, I would say, probably 7 ounces, 6 or 7 ounces of beef. That was my breakfast. And then a little bit later in the morning, I sat down and I said, okay, I'm a little hungry, I guess. I went into my little refrigerator. I had some boiled eggs that I had cooked yesterday. I grabbed 3 of them and I ate them. Peeled them and ate them right there. That's all I've had to eat today.
Oh boy.
We're looking at, it's almost 2:30 here for us as we're recording this. That's all I've eaten today. And then I'll go home and I'll have a sensible dinner. I've got 4 chicken thighs, the quarters, leg quarters, over there. Guess I could say chilling out, but they're actually warming up. They're thawing out. Okay, so when I get home, I won't have to work as long to thaw them out. I've had them out most of the afternoon, so they'll be thawed out. I'll be grilling those for dinner tonight. Probably have a vegetable.
I hope so.
Maybe, maybe not. But in a general sense, I don't worry about it too much because I know that most of the nutrients that I need, I get.
See,
And so I'm not out there saying I have to go out there and have this supplement or that thing. My body kind of tells me, okay, Alan, it's been a while. You probably should eat some more vegetables. And then there'll be times when I'll have a big honking salad and I'll throw all kinds of stuff on it. And it's like I'll be eating mostly vegetables, but I don't worry about it too much because I just say, okay, I know if I'm eating a whole protein, I'm not going to overeat.
There you go. Yeah.
But if I sat down and said, well, I need more protein, and I started making myself protein shakes, pretty quickly I would start packing on pounds because while might need protein, I don't need it that way.
Sure.
And I think we get caught in this trap of, oh, but this is healthy. The rule is I need more protein, eat more protein. Well, no, that's not a rule. It's not a rule your body recognizes. Yes, you do need a certain amount of protein. But we've never in the history of man been able to drink protein. Okay, if we went out and got an animal for protein, a fish or an egg, I guess you could drink an egg.
You.
Yeah. Ew. Yeah. Ew. See, there you went. And I would. That's why I don't eat like a normal person. But for the most part, our body has to digest that stuff. It's not pre-digested the way when it's made into a whey protein, and we're drinking it with all the other stuff that we got to put in there to make it drinkable,
To make it palatable.
to make it. And so it's kind of that point of, if you're trying to lose weight, if you believe your body needs to lose some weight, and you're like, well, but I'm getting all this healthy food, you still might be getting more than you need.
Right.
While still not getting what you need.
Well, there's
So we're living in an age where we are overfed and undernourished. And I'm going to keep talking about this because this is the big deal. People who are eating more than they need aren't necessarily getting what they need.
That's a good point.
And so don't think you need something, therefore. Be thinking about, is this really healthy and what my body expects and needs? And if you are listening to your hunger, it's so easy to drink too many calories and not hear it. And so if you're eating and chewing and taking your time with it, because guess what? I'm not drinking a shake. I'm not drinking a steak. I'm chewing it up and I'm eating it. I didn't drink those eggs. They were boiled. I had to eat them. And so I'm eating them, I'm shelling them, and then I'm eating the next one, and then I'm done. 3. That was enough. Move on. And so again, I don't want you to eat the way I eat. I want you to eat the way you need to eat to feel satiated, to feel what you need, to get what your body needs for the nutrition it needs. So we are nourished, but not overfed.
That's a good point. And
that's the math.
That's good math. And you discuss meal planning, and I think choosing what you're eating is part of that meal planning process. And making those plans also align with how your day-to-day activity is. So on the days that you lift heavy in the gym, on the days that I go running for more miles than just 1 or 2, I mean, our way of eating can change day to day, and the nutrients that we need can change day to day. And planning all those things out, just writing these things down, are super helpful.
Yeah, and for me, I most of my shopping, I'm like, what's my protein? Where's my protein? And so I probably stop in a store every 2 or 3 days and buy protein, and it'll be in the form of steak or chicken or pork or whatever. But I make sure that there's a protein source in every meal. And then from there I build it out and say, okay, I've got the protein and that's enough protein. And so therefore I don't feel like I have the need to drink the protein. I do have some protein powder here. If there was something I was saying, okay, I kind of worked out a little harder yesterday and I need a little bit more protein, I do have access to some protein powder that I can either mix in a drink or in some other food, and usually with some other food, because again, I want to feel full when I eat. I don't want to sit there and say, okay, yeah, I could drink 1,000 calories. Yay, me. Yeah. I really want it to give my body what it needs and nothing more.
That's a good point.
And if we're doing that, then that's where you got, and planning does help with that. If you get yourself famished and you're starving, you're like, well, I'm just going to bop in here and, oh, wow, here, look at these sweet rolls sitting on the counter here,
Yeah.
and now you find yourself walking down the chip aisle. Your body doesn't need that, but you're
Right.
hungry. So it's telling you, feed me. And you just happen, that's where you are. And all the pretty labels and all the stuff, you're buying that stuff and you're eating it versus saying, I know I've got this.
Yeah.
You know, someone was saying, like, I really struggle with time.
Right.
Like, okay, quick and simple. You walk into the grocery store, you go one place, you go to the deli. They've got the rotisserie chickens there. You literally grab one of those and you literally turn 180 degrees in almost every grocery store I've ever been, and boom, there's pre-made salads.
For sure.
Literally, you buy if it's just you and maybe one other person, literally you buy the chicken, you turn around, you grab 2 of those salads and out the door, and you've got 2 meals
Easily.
for 2 people. 4 meals if it's just for you.
See, even that
Right
right there, Alan, is planning. I mean, you need
It
to
is.
plan because when you get hungry or hangry, you're not going to make the best decisions. So when you are running long, your workday got busy and you're coming home from work late, you're super hungry, you have this in your mind as your plan of attack. So you can't cook your giant dinner like you would have normally planned. This is the shortcut you take, and it's still a healthy shortcut.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is if you sit down on a Sunday and you say, okay, I'm going to grill all this meat or bake all this meat, and I'm literally going to put it away. And some of it's in the fridge and some of it's in the freezer.
Perfect.
Then and again, that's why I have food here in my office. Is I could walk out of here and go to a grocery store and just like anybody else, buy chips and crackers and cookies and all that stuff that's here, or I've got pickles and olives and protein sources right here. Like I said, I keep the eggs boiled and in the fridge ready to go. If I find myself hungry, there we go. I've planned that well enough so that I'm not in a pickle, if you will,
Pun
where I'm
intended.
having to eat something else. So, just realize, yes, there's planning involved, but the core one I wanted to take away, particularly from the concept of eat like a normal person, is don't lose your mind on what you think is healthy. You need to nourish your body, but not overfeed it. And unfortunately, we live in an environment where what's provided as food and even healthy food, it doesn't do that. It overfeeds us and undernourishes us. And so we've got to move away from that and start thinking about nourishment as the answer. Because food that nourishes you will help you feel full if you slow down enough to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can relax a little bit more and not be so hung up on what you're eating.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. How to eat like a normal person. Perfect.
All right. Well, I will talk to you next week.
Great. Take care, Alan.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. I'd also love to connect with you on my new Instagram account, @CoachAlanM. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we discuss a topic that comes up all the time when we're talking about weight loss, health, and fitness: alcohol consumption. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.